Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode, the first of 2025 from us. And we have brought this episode on the basis that we are putting together a workshop for our Catalyst Career Club members on career change, because we know at this time of year, having had perhaps some time to reflect, some time away from a role, that this can be a real kind of catalyst time for people wanting to make career change. So we thought we would take some of the good stuff that we're going to be covering with our members in this Friday. If you listen to it as this episode is released, we're going to be covering in that workshop, and we thought we would bring that to you. Pam, this is definitely prime time of year, isn't it? January, for people wanting to make career change.
Yeah, I think everybody falls into the new year, new you, don't they? And it's like the ideal opportunity to reassess and think, am I in the right place? What do I actually want out of this year? What do I want from the future? So I feel like it's a great time if you have been considering career change to really start unpacking it and thinking about what that could look like for you moving forward.
And what are some of the reasons? So when you work with clients that are looking to make career change, what are some of the drivers or reasons that prompt that to be something that people get to that conclusion that change is needed for them in their career?
So there's quite a few reasons, but just I think the main ones would be, first of all, somebody's fed up in the role. They've just had enough. There's nothing that can change their mind. They just want that change. They need that change. And then you've also got the people who've hit the ceiling point in their roles, and they can also fall into the fed up category as well, because they've got to a point where they've been in a role for a number of years and there's nowhere else they can go. They've not got a manager they can learn from. And they're just like, I've had enough of this. Nothing else I can do in this role. It's time for a change. And then you've got the people who maybe took the wrong career path and they've been kicking themselves for the last few years, maybe even the last 5 to 10 years, thinking, why on earth did I go down this route? Could I have done something different? Or actually, I know I was meant to do something different and I'm stuck in this role and it's relentless and it's not fulfilling me, bringing me any joy. And again, those people will also start to fall into that fed up category. And then you've also got the decline in industries. So the people that have gone down one route, we see it a lot with like publishing and print and all of that kind of stuff. And now they're getting to a point where companies are making redundancies because those jobs are becoming less and less as time goes on. And now they need to think about changing years or changing the role that they've been in order to fit with future requirements. And that can be quite tough because sometimes those career changes are forced rather, where you get to the point where you're fed up. Sometimes that can be a bit easier because you're ready to make that change. Whereas when we see it in the outplacement workshops, when those career changes are forced, it can be quite difficult for those people.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to you describe those different categories of people, because I was thinking about my own situation and when I left employment, and I knew I didn't want to go back into the same thing, but I wasn't really didn't feel ready to start my own business. And so it took some time for me to get to that point of, no, coaching is what I want to do. That's what I was meant to do. It doesn't feel as safe or secure, but then I've been made redundant twice from employed roles. So really, is it less secure? And then equally, I was thinking about clients that I've worked with, because I think we get clients at slightly different points. So you get people that come to you, probably, I would imagine, mostly from the fed up category. and then like with the outplacement work with you together from maybe that forced change. But in my leadership coaching work, one of the things that I sometimes see is that when people are going through that, they're not necessarily feeling like they need a change, but there's something not quite clicking. And so some of the career work that I do with clients is not because they come to me for career coaching, it's because in the work that we do around exploring their leadership role, it then becomes apparent that this is not going to be a fulfilling path for them to continue along. So that's what then prompts us to explore. So if people are listening to this and might be in any of those camps, they come to you, what's the first stage that you're going to take somebody through? So somebody who's maybe in a declining industry or who's reached that ceiling, where do you start when you're working with those clients?
I think regardless of the reason why the career change needs to happen or people would like the career change to happen, I think the first thing that we need to do is get clarity around that. And we need to understand exactly where that change is coming from, why it's needed, how the person feels about the change as well, because we don't want them taking any baggage into their job search, into interviews, into their future roles. So it's about understanding where it's all coming from and getting everything in check. So before we do anything, that is like the key to it all. It's getting that clarity and really unpacking that. And sometimes that can take a couple of sessions because people need to really think about it. And we run a whole challenge on career clarity, didn't we, over a full week? And there were so many light bulb moments that come from that. But you do need that space to reflect. And obviously you need to be asked the right questions as well. So gaining that clarity, I think, is the first part and the most important part. If you try to do it all without gaining that clarity first, what you'll end up with is more of the same, or you'll end up going down a path that you're like, oh, how did I end up here? Or this is not quite right. And it's like, it's because you didn't get the clarity before you started.
So once people have got that bit then, and they're right, this is why I need to make a change, I've made my peace with it and feeling like I might not be running at it, but I'm at least okay with starting to want to make that change, then what do they need to consider next?
So I think the next thing is going to be about their limiting beliefs, because everyone has them. And I think people who are going into a career change position definitely have a lot more limiting beliefs going on in their minds than they actually realize. So it's about uncovering those as well. And then being able to go, right, okay, is this a limiting belief, or do we have some evidence that backs that up? And then what do we do then moving forward? And how do we make sure that we can create the right job search strategy for you based on what you would like to achieve? And I think once you understand what your limiting beliefs are, and for some people, they go, oh my goodness, this is actually why I've stayed where I was for so long, because I had this limiting belief and I didn't even realize. And it could be that you, for example, you can't move because you'll have to take a pay cut. That is a massive limiting belief for a lot of career changes, and it's not always true. You can actually, and we've seen and helped hundreds of people now, haven't we, make a change without taking a pay cut. Things like that are what we need to iron out as well at the start. Once you've got the clarity, and then you look at what are the limiting beliefs that are going to stop you moving forward and put barriers in your way, because those limiting beliefs will really hold you back if you don't get a grip of them in the early stages.
Yeah. And if you're listening wondering what the hell is a limiting belief, because I'm aware it is quite coachy speak. So some people are very aware of it and others not so much. Essentially, it is those kind of almost subconscious beliefs, isn't it, that people form, and they're not necessarily front of mind for people, but they are acting in line with those subconscious beliefs. So as coaches, very often, part of our role is helping clients to recognize that maybe there's some beliefs that have been formed that they haven't tested, that they don't have evidence for. And I think that's a great example of that you have to take a pay cut to make a change, because that is an assumption and a belief that a lot of people will have. And so often it keeps people stuck from actually taking action because they just assume it's not possible and they just put up with something that they know they're not happy with rather than try and make a change.
Yeah, the limiting beliefs, especially around the pay element, are huge and will keep people stuck, because especially if their financial circumstances say that they can't possibly make a move because they can't afford to live unless they're being paid a certain level of salary, that will mean that person will just carry on working, doing what they're doing and just trying to get through each day because they've got those financial responsibilities, they've got those family responsibilities. There's a lot going on there. And when we find that clarity and start looking at different options and things like that, what they then realize is this could be a possibility. And when, especially when you're on Zoom with somebody and you just see that light bulb go off and their whole body language change and their face light up, and it's like, this could actually be a possibility for me. And that, I suppose, that is what I love about doing that career change coaching, because you just see like people come on and they're very much down in the dumps because, you know, they want to make this change, they don't know how to make it happen, or they'd like to make a change but don't know where to start. And just being able to see how the light bulbs start going off just in those early stages before we've even got into the whole process, it is probably one of the best things about the coaching that we do. And especially when you see that in the outplacement workshops or on a one-to-one basis, it is just probably one of the most amazing parts of what we do.
What other limiting beliefs can there be that crop up at this stage? Because the financial one's huge, but there are also others, aren't there, that can come up. So what might people not realize, but perhaps recognize if you say it now?
I think one of the other ones that comes up is that people think they can't change industries because they've not got that industry experience. So you get that a lot with marketing or sales roles where people think I can only sell this product, or I'm only used to selling these products or services, so I've got to stick with it. So maybe it's a different type of role within this industry, but actually you can scale it back and look at the skill set, and then you can know that those skills are then transferable across different categories, across different industries. And I think that is another thing that holds people back because they just think they're tied to their industry. And then also, if people are looking at different roles, so just to give you an example, like there could be somebody who's got operations leadership experience who would quite like to move into project management, for example, but they've not yet done that as a lead role. They've not been completely responsible for projects, but they might have worked within those different areas and know that could be a move for them. But they think because they've not had a complete role with that job title that they can't approach it and start adding those roles into their job search strategy. So I think that's another key thing that comes up as well.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you describing that, it's prompting some of those thoughts for me about different clients that I've worked with and some of the assumptions that they've made. So definitely I've seen that one of, if I haven't got industry experience or I haven't got enough industry experience, no one will look at me, no one will want me to do that. And another one that I see is that when people are in roles that offer them good flexibility, they assume that they won't be able to move until they can work full time again, or until they can commit to being in an office again. And so there is an assumption you can't make a move if you've negotiated flexibility with your existing employer. You're locked in and that's it. You can't move elsewhere. And it's that phrase that we repeat of the first step to getting what you want is knowing what you want. That really comes into play, doesn't it, with those limiting beliefs of, okay, we can test those assumptions, we can look at how true those things might or might not be, but let's start with what you actually want. So when people get to that stage, then they've got the clarity, they've maybe had some assumptions uncovered that may or may not be true. What's the practical steps that they can then start to take to say, okay, if I know what I want and I know that some of these things may play in, but maybe I'm going to suspend judgment on those, where do they start with the practical side of starting to plan for and make that change?
So I think from a practical point of view, I think the first thing you would want to do before you move into getting started is also a quick check-in on your values as well, just to see what they are, because when you get into job search mode, you'll want to be looking at, do my values align with the company's values that I'm applying to? And that really does help, because a lot of people don't really ever identify what their values are, and it can really make the difference with the type of companies that you apply to, the type of roles that you apply for, and also the type of life that you would like to have as well, because the work-life balance is super important. And I always think this is a great opportunity to really lean into that work-life balance that you'd like to achieve. This is your opportunity to shop around and find a company that is right for you. So once you've had to check in with your values, the next thing is going to be looking at your career map. Now, the career map is essentially looking at all of your previous positions, and you would want to go through that in detail, and we've got a download so we can add into the show notes so that you can download that. And what you would want to do is go back through each role and look at what you did and what you delivered within each role. Now, what you want to do is do that with a real open mind to start with. Don't be trying to pull in the things that are relevant for where you think you might want to go. You just want to approach it with a real open mind. What did I actually do in that role? What did I deliver? What am I proud of? Who were the people that I worked with? What did I love and hate about that role? And what you want to do is get it all in there. And then once you've got that, what you've got then is a base for so many things. So a base to get your CV started, a base for interview prep. You've got a base then to think about what options could be viable based on the experience that you've got. Now, I guarantee that you will find stuff in there that you've forgotten about, that you have just disregarded because it hasn't been relevant for other roles that you've applied for. But this is the point now where you're just getting everything out on the table. So this is not to show anyone. This is just for your own prep work. And this is literally just pouring everything out there, thinking through every single interaction that you had as much as possible, and you'll be surprised how many things that you've forgotten. So the career map exercise isn't one that you're just doing 10 minutes or doing half an hour and then go, I'm done. That's it. It's something that once you start it, you can keep going back to, you can keep adding to it. I guarantee when you're in the shower, you will think of more stuff. You'll think of more interactions that you've had. You'll think of more stuff that you love and you hated about previous roles, maybe even people that you loved and hated. You'll think of these things when you're shopping. Anytime you get a space in your mind to think, these things are going to start popping in because you've activated it and because you've started to pour it all out and get it all onto the page. So the career map is probably one of the most important things, because that is where you are going to then create your strategy, because you can then see, what have I got that is relevant to roles that I might want to apply for. Now, at this point, you've not started looking at the options yet. This is just purely about the reflection and making sure that you've got that foundation to work from.
I think it's fascinating hearing, because there was so much that you've just covered in that brief time. And I think it's fascinating for people to consider how much goes before they start actually looking at options. Because I would imagine for most people, if they've not listened to this, certainly if I look back donkey's years ago, my approach, I imagine, would have been, I want to make a change, I'll start Googling, going on job sites and speaking to recruiters and putting the feelers out and seeing what's out there. So it's coming from that place of being guided by what's external, as opposed to what you're describing, which is very much a place of starting with what's internal and then considering how you can make a match between that and what's external.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, because when people come to work with me, they can make that change happen pretty quickly. And other people will say to me, how did you make that happen so fast? And it is just purely because of the strong foundations. If you're trying to do anything in some kind of random way, or you're just hoping for a bit of luck or a little bit of insight, it's not going to happen. But what you find is when you plan anything, regardless of what it is, whether it's your job search, your career change, life, anything, whatever you plan, it might not always go completely to plan, but you'll have a better chance of achieving something or achieving something better because you've got a good foundation to base it on.
So at what stage do people then look externally? What stage do people get to? And how do they then start to look for suitable options?
So I think once you've done the career map and you've really had a good think about what you've done in the past and the stuff that you enjoyed and obviously didn't enjoy, then that's where more options will become available. That's where you will start to think, oh, and just using an example, a guy that I've been working with recently, he was working in operations management. He was looking at heads of operations roles and different levels of operations roles, but ultimately that wasn't what was making him happy or bringing him joy, and he wanted to branch out more into the project side of things. But at that point, like when he came to me, he was like, but I can't go into projects because I've not got enough project experience. But after he'd done the career map exercise, he realized that, wow, I've got a lot of project experience. It's just fragmented and there's different levels and different amounts throughout all of the roles that I've done. But the common theme throughout my whole career is that I have proactively managed projects. And that was a huge light bulb moment for him, because then when he started looking at different options, there was different levels of project manager role that he could look at and think about applying for, and then was able to tailor his CV so much easier. And also when it comes to putting a cover letter together, he was able to really articulate like why he wanted to make this move into projects and what he could bring, the knowledge he already had, and then obviously leaning into this is what I've already got. And he's great at motivating and inspiring teams and all the rest of that, all of the stuff that is super relevant for projects. And he was able to talk about that, and then off the back of that gain interviews. And it was the cover letter where people came to him and we'd like to invite you for interview because your cover letter like really hit home for us. It was really nice to see what motivates and inspires you and what you've done with your teams, because we think that would be great for us. So come and talk to us about it. So I think it does, when you start looking at the options, it really does open it up for you if you've done that work. And then you can also then start looking at, okay, what else and what is similar, or what is a stopgap, or what is a bridge to that role possibly that I'd like to do.
It's really interesting hearing you describe that, because what that kicks off in my brain is the memories of different times with clients where almost because we've worked together by the stage that they're thinking about making a change, I almost naturally reflect back to them what I've seen and experienced and understood. And then they're nodding at me and going, yeah, yeah. And so I almost see how all that they've got and all that they've done and all that they are can be packaged up and what they can offer a value. But they're often stuck in that limiting belief space of all the reasons and assumptions why it's not going to work, it won't be possible, it's going to be hard, I'll have to take a pay cut, all of those things. So for me, that's incredibly rewarding, is that moment where we as coaches reflect back to somebody that value proposition that we've experienced them share with us in little bits at different times. And then they go, yeah, I suppose I did say all of that. I suppose that actually is. And that's the moment, isn't it, where people just go, ping.
Yeah, and I think that's the moment where people suddenly realize that I can go to interviews and I can sell myself and I can transfer that information that is going to show that employer that I'm the right person for this role, and then I can add value. Because for some reason with career changes, they go into interviews on the back foot and they send in their CV and their applications and so much on the back foot because they're like almost going with the begging bowl. Please give me a chance because I'd like to move into this new role, or I'd like to move into this industry or your company. And, I've not really got everything that you need. Please, can you give me the chance? And I think that's where you need to go, okay, I actually, as a person, as an individual with this whole career to date, can bring value to your organization. And I think when you step into that, when you own what you can do and deliver, yeah, there might be stuff that you need to learn in this new role. But who wants to go into a role where they know 100% of everything? Because that is going to be boring. And honestly, we know people don't stay. When you go into a role and you can do 100% of it standing on your head, people don't last long. They get bored. They want to move on. What an employer is looking for is somebody that is going to add value, somebody who can demonstrate their value, somebody who can get stuck in. And I'd usually say hit the ground running, but you don't actually need to hit the ground running anywhere. But what you do need to do is you need to demonstrate the value that you can bring and show that you are willing and capable of learning the things that you would need to learn in order to be effective within that organization. And if they think you're the right person, they are going to support that learning curve. They are going to support that introduction into their company. And I do strongly believe that people buy from people, don't they? They say that in sales and marketing and all the rest of it. People buy from people, but essentially it's the same when it comes to interviews and things like that, because people really do buy into people as well. The amount of times that we've been involved in interview processes where the hiring manager has said, I know that person hasn't got everything that we need, but you know what? I think they're going to be a great addition to the team. I love the energy that they bring. And I feel like I clicked really well with them. And that more often than you see people going, that person has got 100% of what we need.
It's so true. And as I reflect on what you've shared, the way that I was assimilated in my head is essentially there's two aspects. There's the belief of what you bring and your own understanding of your value proposition for a future employer. And then there's the skill of articulating that. So through your CV, through your conversations during a recruitment process. And I love that discussion around the begging bowl, because that's something that's come up at our career clinics before, where people have absolutely been in that place and we've been, okay, no, do not ask somebody to place a bet on you and take a risk. Go into that with knowledge of what you bring and the ability to articulate it in a way that person will buy into it. So thank you for all that you've shared with that. It's been brilliant to go through it. For those of you that are listening, if you want to go into a little bit more depth, and this is something that is relevant for you, if you are listening before the 10th of January, you are still in time to sign up and attend the live workshop in the Catalyst Career Club this month. And if you're listening after, then if you sign up, you get access to the recording of that. So that will go into much more depth on those aspects of how to articulate it, how to create the plan, how to test those assumptions. And equally, if you are listening to that and recognizing that maybe a workshop might be useful, but really what you need is some of that one-to-one time and space to really get under the skin of it, then please do connect with Pam, drop her a message. She is an absolute magician when it comes to ensuring that people are able to achieve the career goals and find those roles that they set their mind to. So if coaching and that one-to-one support of being able to understand what change you want and then have the plan to actually connect the dots and make it happen for yourself, then please do get in touch with her and she'll be more than happy, I'm sure, to discuss that with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another episode. And in the meantime, if there is anything that you would like us to cover on the podcast in 2025, then please do drop either of us a message. We love producing episodes that we know are things that people are waiting to listen to. So now is the time to drop us your ideas. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50k or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.